This map is a little old, but it's the most recent one I could find. And we're based out of Florida, and as you can see, there's lots of little lights there. Each one symbolizes a project. Over in Texas now, which is where I work actually, I run projects in Dallas, 4 of them. And we have about 80 active jobs in Texas right now. And in California, we're up to 12. I think it's only showing about 4 or 5 right now on that map. But as you can see, they call this the smile of the United States. You don't want to be up there in the Midwest, really, trust me. So, and general project operation for construction. So this is the breakdown of the channels of communication. And when working in project management, it's always important to follow channels of communication, or you may get yourself in trouble. It's happened plenty of times. So as you can see at the top, you have the owner, the developer, the guy with the big money who buys the land and plans to build this project. They hire a general contractor who's assigned to maintain schedule and hire subcontractors, manage them, and make sure that the project gets in goal, financially, per schedule and all that stuff. And especially with student housing, schedule is very, very important because oftentimes the students move in just before their semester starts. And if you miss that, it's not good. It's important to have a place to live, even as a student. So under the general contractor, you see there's a few different, they have their own field staff, office staff, and so forth. And then there's subcontractors. So we would be one of the key trades, an electrical contractor. And we have our own suppliers, own staff, obviously. And then if you go back to the owner developer on the other side, they work with the architect and the engineer and have consultants often. And oftentimes we are actually the engineer of record on projects as well, because we have in-house engineering. So as a project manager, what do you do and what are you responsible for? Basically everything. So I am responsible for all business aspects of the project, which means bringing it in at financial goals, responsible for managing all our internal resources. So in our company, we have a bunch of internal resources. We have our coordination department. They basically create installation drawings for us, and I'm not going to go into the details here. We have engineering, we have systems where you do lighting control systems, smart systems, like you can control via your phone, camera systems, CCTV. We have a fire alarm department. We have a department for lighting fixtures. We have legal. We have a bunch of internal resources, and they all report to you as a project manager. And you are held accountable as a project manager for basically everything. These departments are not always held as hard. So it is your job to make sure they get done what needs to be done, basically, which can be very challenging. You need to learn to build a relationship with a lot of people. You need to learn to make them want to do their job. There's different ways to approach different people. As you know, everyone is different. And it's good if you can develop a relationship with these guys. And our business model is that we have all these departments here in Florida. So if you need something, you can walk over to their desk, tap them on the shoulder and be like, hey, buddy, how's it going with this? How's everything else going? All right, you think you can have this to me on Monday the 7th? Follow up with an email, check in on them. So if something's not done, it's your responsibility. Another big thing, huge thing, is customer relationships. Like I said, we get a lot of repeat business, and if you can keep that customer happy and give them what they want, make their life easier, you are set for success without a doubt. Other things I manage: schedule, labor planning, labor in general. There's different ways to do that. You can have your own electricians. You can hire a third party. You can hire an installation team. Many ways to approach that. All the material. Basically, you're responsible for everything. And it's a very dynamic position. me coming from energisystem, a lot of my colleagues, they're working with updating the electrical grid, or maybe in hydropower or nuclear power, working as engineers. And our engineers, they do a bit of repetitive work. They mostly work in the drawings. They do a lot of CAD. I think it's very fun being a project manager because you get to work with people. If you don't want to work with too much with people in a day, you can go in and do voltage drop calcs, or you can go in and work in the drawings. And I mean, you get to go out in the field as much as you want. You can plan your own days. It's very dynamic, and that's very fun, in my opinion. So moving on, our typical project life cycle starts with a project award. An email goes out, which is called a project start notification, which triggers certain project start processes and sets some deadlines that you need to follow up on. Moving through the project life cycle, it's not this perfect little path here, but you roll into the project strategy. You need to get to know the customer, get to know your internal team, a contract review, super important. I'll go into that a little more in detail. You need to get with engineering and coordination, make sure they have what they need, make sure they can deliver in time. You do takeoffs on the building in regards to labor material. You need to figure out your routing for your riser, your large electrical conduits and risers basically that will provide power for the entire building. Submittals go on to buyout, and then you baseline the project with upper management. Then you go into production, which is the longest phase, and in the end, close out warranty and finish. And obviously you want to finish really strong, keep these repeat customers happy. So if we go into the project award here, we have with our company 3 different contract types. So the highest level of contract is design build, where we are the engineer of record. And I'll want to go back to that initial screen showing you the channels of communication. So we have in-house the engineer that works for ownership, and then we work for the general contractor. It's easy to go in between there and work straight with engineering, and you can backtrack information, but that is something you want to be very careful with, because if you don't have directive from who you're working for, the general contractor, you could get yourself in a lot of trouble. Second contract type, design assist. We are very specialized in electrical design, and we can oftentimes, if not every single time, find a lot of savings and still build to code. So this is our most common contract type with our customers. We will revise their specifications and drawings ever so slightly to save them money and save ourselves some money. And we have a lot of in-house competence to do this. And this is also, you don't have as much responsibility, but yes, you have more responsibility than the third option below, plans and specs. So there are different balances to walk with the different contract types. Plans and specs basically means plans and specifications. The specifications will tell you what type of material you need to provide, colors. The plans show exactly what you need to install. You follow those plans and specs, you will be fine. And so also a project award, besides reviewing the contract, you need to get to know the project team, the customer, and your internal guys as well. And it always helps if you work with guys before. It makes it so much easier because you know their capabilities, weaknesses, and strengths, which is important as a project manager to do. So after project award, you go into project strategy. So the contract documents, documentation there, plans and specifications, like we said. The schedule is also a contract. You go in, and also your budget is something that you need to set. I will go into that a little bit in detail, but that basically reflects your whole broad project for the lifespan, which is typically 2 to 3 years for us in our industry, and then takeoffs as well. A huge, very important is pre-planning coordination. So when you're building a building, building a building, good choice of words. something that's very important is temporary power and distribution. So when you start, you need power straight away. The general contractor will typically have a tower crane. They'll want to have a buck hoist as well, which is basically a temporary elevator. I don't know if you walked by some construction in Stockholm lately, but you'll see how they have these exterior elevators that go up and down. That's a buck hoist. Any other equipment, you need to provide temporary lighting in the entire building as you go up as well. And also power plugs where other trades can put their tools in. So you need to have a strategy for your temporary power. Where in the building are we going up and so forth, and how large of a service do we need? And then the main thing is distribution as well. This is absolute key for us. This is the backbone of the electrical distribution, essentially. And you need to have a path of this a routing. I'm not going to go into the details, but typically when we feed the building, we'll have, for 4,000 amp service, we'll have 12 4-inch conduits. For each inch is 2,5 centimeter. So each conduit is essentially 10 centimeters in width, and you have 12 of these coming up. You may have 12,000 amps of service going up the building. So you're going to have 36 10-centimeter conduits going up somewhere in the building. They might need to transition into different electrical rooms. This is absolutely key to look at this early on in the project. Then slab, deck, and structure. This ties in as well. You want to get your sleeves in the decks. In some buildings, you have exposed concrete ceilings. So already when they're pouring the concrete, you need to get a box in with conduit so you can get power to that exact location. And in regards to installation, customers typically only look at the dwelling units. They never look at the back of house areas, janitor closets, storage areas, electrical rooms. That's something we always need to keep up with, because if that's not done, we can't turn over the building when the time comes as well. And here's something that's really important, the contract. So no matter what you do, if you follow your contract, you're going to be okay. It can be very stringent here, and in the States, they're into the business of suing each other. I'm sure everyone's heard the story of the woman that went to McDonald's. She spilled some coffee on herself. She sued them for millions of dollars and got it because they didn't have a label saying warning hot on the coffee cup. So now they do, and everyone else does as well. And here in the States, companies systematically sue each other. It's a little different in Sweden. We're a little nicer there. We go for fika and we get along. But here, you are held to your contract, and following your contract, you're never wrong. And that's something you can always explain to the customer, like, hey, man, you're following your contract. You're trying to make money. I understand. I have to follow a contract. I can't just take your word and do this. If you want me to do that, give me a written directive. Follow up with an email, because oftentimes your contract will inform you that if the general contractor gives you a written directive, you are to proceed with that, and you have the right to compensation for that work. And so contract review is so important. It's not very fun. The contracts I review, they can oftentimes be 200-300 pages long. And yes, you do have assistance from the legal department as well and other departments. But in the end, you're the project manager, so you are responsible. So some different contract types here. First, you have your initial contract, legal binding agreement, enforceable in the court of law. And when it comes to it in the courts, all they ask about is the contract. So enough about that. Change orders is additional work not identified in the original scope of work. So they might want to add some extra lights. They might want to add an extra level with extra units. That would be called a change order.